Robin Roberts' silent struggle at 65 is truly tragic. Robin Roberts has spent decades as the steady voice of American mornings. She's the anchor who guided millions through disasters, celebrations, and everything in between on Good Morning America. But what most people don't realize is just how much she's been fighting behind that warm smile. At 65, after surviving breast cancer, a bone marrow transplant, and losses that would break most people, Robin's facing struggles that go deeper than headlines can capture. Before we get into her story, if you've ever admired Robin's strength or been inspired by her journey, leave a like. It's a small way to honor someone who's given so much while carrying so much pain. Here's where it really begins. Robin didn't come from privilege or easy circumstances. She was born November 23, 1960, in Tuskegee, Alabama, the youngest of 4 kids. Her father, Colonel Lawrence E. Roberts, was one of the Tuskegee Airmen. That sounds heroic, and it was, but it also meant growing up in a household where discipline wasn't optional. Her dad carried the weight of what he'd seen during the war in his silence, in the way he held his shoulders, in expectations that didn't bend. Her mother, Lucy Marion, softened things with faith and music, but the house still ran like a military operation. By the time Robin was 5, she already understood that strength wasn't something you were born with. It was something demanded of you. Growing up in Mississippi during the 1960s meant dealing with segregation, with being overlooked, with doors that opened differently depending on who you were. Robin has talked about those 3 Ds her parents drilled into them: discipline, determination, and delored. Not as motivational quotes, but as survival tools. And then came the storms. When Robin was 8 years old, Hurricane Camille tore through the Gulf Coast in 1969. She watched roofs peel off houses like paper, trees snap into splinters, families lose everything overnight. The next morning, she walked through streets covered in glass and debris, seeing neighbors trying to piece together what was left. Those hurricanes weren't just weather events for her. They were lessons in how fast safety can disappear and how much courage it takes just to keep standing. But even with all that weight, Robin found her escape in sports. Basketball and tennis became her way to breathe, to prove she was more than what people assumed about a young black girl in the Deep South. She graduated as salutatorian in 1979 and threw herself into becoming someone no one could ignore. But listen to this. After graduating from Southeastern Louisiana University in 1982, Robin stepped into the real world with a broadcasting degree and big dreams. Reality hit hard. Her first job at WDAM in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, in 1983 paid so little, she later joked she made more babysitting. Except it wasn't really a joke. She worked 12 to 14-hour days because she knew everyone in that newsroom was watching, waiting for her to fail. She's said it herself. "I knew I had to be twice as good just to be considered equal." Money was tight in ways that left marks. She drove beat-up cars that broke down on empty Mississippi roads after late shoots. She lived in cramped apartments where the heat stayed off in winter because turning it on meant going over budget. There were nights when rain leaked through a warped window and Robin sat at her kitchen table, exhausted and alone, whispering to herself to just hold on a little longer. She wasn't homeless, but she was painfully isolated. In her early 20s, she moved from Hattiesburg to Biloxi in 1984, then Nashville in 1986, then Atlanta in 1988. Each move stripped everything down to zero. New city, no friends, no safety net, just another newsroom where she had to prove she deserved to exist in the job she loved. She carried her own camera equipment, drove herself to rural high school football games, set up shots in mud, wrote scripts by hand, and edited footage long after everyone else had gone home. She became her own crew, not because she wanted to, but because she had no choice. It gets worse. In 1987, a male co-worker brushed past her and said, Sports isn't a place for women. Another time, an athlete laughed when she walked into a locker room with a microphone. The humiliation cut deep, but Robin learned not to let someone else's doubt become her reality. There were nights she drove hundreds of miles on empty highways, tears blurring her vision, gripping the steering wheel and praying she wouldn't fall asleep. She'd whisper into the darkness, "One day they'll see me. One day I won't have to prove I belong." And then came the breakthrough. Atlanta changed everything. Covering the Braves in the late 1980s gave her visibility and credibility. By the time ESPN called in 1990, it wasn't luck. It was the result of 7 brutal years of fighting for every inch. When ABC News brought her on in 1995 at 35, and then made her co-anchor of Good Morning America in 2005, it felt like everything she'd sacrificed had finally been worth it. Working alongside Diane Sawyer and later George Stephanopoulos, Robin became the emotional center of America's mornings. Her warmth, her empathy, her ability to hold the country steady during its worst moments made GMA the #1 morning show in 2012 for the first time in years. She was earning over $18 million annually, owned beautiful homes, and seemed untouchable. But the cost was steep. She woke up at 2:45 a.m., stepping into freezing Manhattan darkness while the world slept. She carried the weight of breaking tragedies, interviewed presidents at dawn, and smiled through grief she had no time to process. Some mornings, staring at herself in the makeup mirror, she'd wonder how much more she could give. This is where it all falls apart. In 2007, at 46, when everything seemed golden, Robin felt a lump. Just a small, hard spot beneath her skin, but cold enough to send chills down her spine. Sitting in a sterile exam room, a doctor walked in slowly, holding her chart like it weighed 1,000 pounds. It's breast cancer. She's described that moment as feeling like the floor disappeared. Surgery cut into her strength. Chemotherapy hollowed her out. Her hair fell out in clumps in the shower. Food tasted like metal. The woman in the mirror started to vanish, and still, she kept showing up to the GMA desk, draping herself in scarves, leaning on chairs during breaks, perfecting a smile that hid tremors. Here's where the truth hits hard. Just when hope was stitching itself back together, fate returned in 2012 with something worse. Deep purple bruises appeared on her arms. Exhaustion settled into her bones so heavily that even breathing felt like lifting stone. The diagnosis was myelodysplastic syndrome, MDS, a rare, potentially fatal collapse of the bone marrow. At 49, she wasn't hearing a diagnosis. She was hearing a countdown. Her only hope was a bone marrow transplant, which meant destroying her immune system completely and praying it could be rebuilt. Her sister Sally Ann was a perfect match. When Robin announced her condition live on Good Morning America, something extraordinary happened. Tens of thousands of viewers rushed to join the Be the Match registry. Sign-ups exploded by 1,800% in a single day. Even in her darkest hour, her suffering became hope for others. The transplant happened September 20th, 2012. Robin lay in a dim room while a bag of golden marrow hung above her, fighting its way into her bloodstream. She whispered, "Stay with me. Please stay." But the real chaos starts here. The brutality came after. 100 days of isolation. No embraces, no human warmth, no comforting touch. Nurses moved around her like shadows behind masks and gowns. Nights stretched into endless quiet until alarms would suddenly erupt, her blood pressure crashing, doctors racing to her bedside. She's admitted, "I didn't know if I'd ever say Good Morning America again." The mirror showed a thin, pale figure she barely recognized. But each morning, even when her body felt carved out and hollow, She forced herself to rise. Slowly, gently, the light returned. Her blood counts climbed. Her limbs steadied. Life was stitching itself back into her bones. And then came the moment that changed everything. February 20th, 2013. After 174 days of isolation, fear, and unseen battles, Robin walked back into the Good Morning America studio. The air changed. Conversations stopped. She took her seat, the one she feared she might never see again, and the lights rose around her like a sunrise she'd earned with every ounce of suffering. Good morning, America. Her voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Those 3 words carried the weight of survival, the warmth of gratitude, the quiet thunder of a woman who'd walked to the edge of life and returned with grace. Across the nation, 6.1 million viewers froze. It didn't feel like a broadcast. It felt like a resurrection. Now here's where it gets complicated. Robin's career and health had tested her repeatedly, but love tested her in ways that cut even deeper. She met Amber Lane in 2005 on a blind date both almost canceled. The connection was immediate, but loving openly was impossible. Robin lived in the brightest spotlight in American television. Amber preferred privacy, so their love learned to breathe in secret. From 2005 to 2015, they lived on opposite coasts. 10 years of airport gates and rushed embraces. 10 years of empty beds and holidays split by flights. 10 years of loving someone whose hand you couldn't hold in public. Amber once said, "I never wanted to be her secret," and Robin carried that like a stone against her chest. And it gets even messier. When Robin fought breast cancer in 2007, Amber held her through it all. She held Robin's hair as it fell, steadied her when chemo buckled her knees, wiped her face after night sweats, guided her trembling hands. When MDS hit in 2012, Amber watched monitors flicker through long nights, pressed her palm to glass barriers during isolation when touching wasn't allowed. Then in 2022, fate delivered the cruelest symmetry. Amber was diagnosed with breast cancer, the same disease she'd helped Robin survive. Robin later admitted, "I was stronger during my cancer than during hers." Watching the person who saved you walk into the same fire is a different kind of devastation. After 17 years of secrecy, distance, illness, and choosing each other through every version of darkness, they finally made it official. In a tiny Mexican restaurant over calamari, they exchanged rings. Their 2023 wedding was simple. Sunlight, tears, soft music, close friends, and Lucas the dog in a bow tie. No theatrics, just 2 women who'd walked through fire side by side. But that's not all. The losses didn't stop with illness. In 2004, Robin's father, Colonel Lawrence E. Roberts, died suddenly of cardiac arrest while she was in New York covering news. She wasn't there to hold his hand, to say goodbye. His death left a hollow space inside her that no achievement could fill. She carried that guilt through airports, studios, sleepless nights, imagining conversations they never had. 8 years of grief hadn't even begun to heal when her mother collapsed in 2012. Robin was preparing for her bone marrow transplant when the call came. She tore out her IV, defied medical orders, and flew to Mississippi. By the time she reached her mother's bedside, Lucimarian was fading. Her final words to Robin were airy but clear. "I'm proud of you, and I need you to be brave now." This part left everyone stunned. Robin was fighting for her own life while watching her mother slip away. A double war, body and heart breaking in tandem. She returned to New York for her transplant moving, as she said, like she was walking underwater. She whispered their family prayer, light, love, power, presence, into the sterile air, clinging to it through fever spikes and moments when fear outpaced her pulse. Then there was Joel Siegel. He wasn't just a colleague. He was family, the kind of friend forged in 4 a.m. newsrooms. Joel had been battling colon cancer for years, fighting with humor, even as pain tightened around him. In June 2007, while Robin was preparing for the show, the call came. Joel was gone. The timing was vicious. Within weeks of losing Joel to cancer, Robin found the lump that would lead to her own diagnosis. His death wasn't just grief. It was a prelude, a warning, a storm cloud that refused to stop following her. Here's where the mask falls off. Today, at 65, Robin has built a life most would envy. Her net worth sits around $55 million. She owns a modern farmhouse in Connecticut with floor-to-ceiling windows, exposed beams, and a stone fireplace where she journals on early mornings. She has a waterfront retreat in Key West with a private dock where she and Amber watch sunsets. She drives a Cadillac Escalade and a Mercedes-Benz, owns luxury watches, including a Rolex that reminds her every second is borrowed. But wealth doesn't erase the scars. Robin wakes early now, but not at 2:45 a.m. anymore. She protects her health fiercely with strength training, long walks with Lucas, plant-forward meals, meditation, and that prayer her mother taught her. She undergoes regular checkups, not out of fear, but out of reverence for the life she fought to reclaim. It turns darker from here. What people don't see is the weight she still carries. The guilt of not being there when her father died. The trauma of watching her mother fade while she was fighting for her own life. The years of hiding her relationship with Amber, of living on opposite coasts, of loving in secret. The terror of watching Amber battle the same disease that nearly killed her. Robin's philanthropic work is staggering. Millions raised for Be the Match. Thousands of new bone marrow donors inspired by her story. Continuous contributions to cancer research, disaster relief, education initiatives. She sponsors scholarships in her parents' names, donates quietly to families in medical crisis, uses her platform to elevate overlooked voices. She never seeks credit. She simply gives. But this next twist? Game-changing. Her legacy isn't just survival, it's service. It's showing millions that strength isn't the absence of fear, but the refusal to surrender to it. She's guided strangers through their own dark nights, reminded aging parents trying to stay strong, patients in waiting rooms praying for good news, souls wrestling with loneliness before dawn. That comeback isn't a moment, it's a choice. Yet even in this chapter of peace, there's an undertone of fragility. In 2024, a fall on a tennis court fractured her wrist, a reminder that the body doesn't forget what it's been through. At 65, after everything she's survived, Robin knows better than anyone that life can shift without warning, that storms can return without announcement, that the battles we think are finished sometimes have sequels we didn't see coming. That's when everything crystallized. Robin's silent struggle isn't about one thing. It's the accumulation. The discipline demanded of her before she could even speak. The prejudice that made her work twice as hard for half the recognition. The years of poverty and isolation, driving broken cars down empty roads, whispering to herself to hold on. The cancer that hollowed her out. The MDS that nearly ended everything. The isolation that made her question if she'd ever anchor again. The guilt of losing her father without goodbye. The devastation of losing her mother while fighting for her own life. The years of hiding her love. The terror of watching Amber face cancer. The loss of Joel. The constant pressure to be perfect, composed, strong for millions of viewers who needed her to hold them steady. This is the part that hits hardest. Robin Roberts has given everything to America's mornings. She's been the steady voice when the world trembled, the warm presence when tragedy struck, the anchor people held on to when they needed hope. But she's done it while carrying losses that would shatter most people. She's done it while fighting diseases that could have killed her twice. She's done it while hiding her truth, sacrificing her peace, and pouring every ounce of strength into strangers who may never fully understand what it cost her. At 65, she's not fighting cancer or MDS anymore. She's fighting time, fighting the weight of everything she's carried, fighting to protect the peace she spent a lifetime earning. And that might be the most tragic part of all. After surviving everything life threw at her, the battle isn't over. It's just quieter now. Here's the truth no one wants to say. Robin Roberts is one of the strongest people in American television. But strength has limits, and even legends get tired. The woman who held America together through its darkest mornings has spent decades holding herself together through battles most people can't imagine. And at some point, you have to ask, how much more can one person give? If Robin's story moved you, if her strength inspired you, if her journey reminded you of your own battles, leave a like. It's a small gesture for a woman who's given more than most of us ever will. What do you think made Robin so resilient? Was it her parents' discipline, the storms she survived as a child, or something deeper? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and if you want to hear more stories about people who've overcome the impossible, hit that subscribe button. We'll see you in the next one.